This video hasn't gone the way it was planned. I had originally taken free product in order to do a review of this card game, and I did fully produce that review, which will be the second half of this video. However, after making that video, I learned some key bits of information which are very bad. The game's kinda screwing over its Kickstarter backers. Let me explain. There's two different versions of this game. A retail edition, and a Kickstarter edition. The retail edition is the fully produced game that has technically already released. It's weird, it's kinda still in pre-orders online from the company, but it is out at a few retailers and conventions. The Kickstarter version of the game is kind of like a draft version of the product, with demo card borders, sketch artwork, and a generally different art design. Immediately, a lot of project backers felt as if they've gotten the worst product, and they haven't been happy with the change. But the bigger issue is that it's been 9 months since the expected shipping date for boxes, and a lot of backers just haven't gotten their product. There are delays with products that were supposed to release last year, and there are even longer delays on the more premium products with this Kickstarter. Supposedly, the boxes are shipping now, but I've heard a ton of complaints of people just not getting them. This is apparently a larger issue with Japanime games, but I can't speak too much on that. Delays happen all the time with Kickstarter products, and while it's never a good thing, it is something you have to clearly communicate and deal with. But what makes Oshi Push's delays insulting is that a lot of retailers have been receiving the retailer product. There are stories of people ordering retail boxes and them getting them extremely quickly before the Kickstarter products have even shipped out. Not to mention content creators like me getting products before the people who funded the game in the first place. These delays and difficulty in actually getting product is why the community is kind of half dead for this game, despite things technically already releasing. I hear that the game has done okay at conventions which have product, but there's a lot of anger in the community, and it's not good and taints anything with the game. It's just a massive case of shooting yourself in the foot. Honestly, this entire video was a bad idea for me. It's not really something I was prepared to comment on. And I only took the review because the creator pitch made me laugh and cringe, and I thought it would be different from my usual stuff. That was a decision I made. Once again, I only have the most scuffed sponsorships. Anyway, here's my actual review. There's been a wave of new VTuber-based card games. These are all trying to make profit based on the unholy trinity of idol culture, streaming, and card game collectability. The three big options are V-Card, which is kind of a cheap cash grab, HoloLive, a Bushiroad ran game, and today's topic, Oshi Push. Truthfully, I'm not overly big into VTubing. I've heard the names and seen some of the characters, but I don't really watch any. It's very limited exposure, all things considered. I only took the review because the sponsorship email had a media deck that did psychic damage to anyone who wasn't terminally online. Now, the game I ended up receiving definitely reflected that pitch. Cringe humor, internet references, and characters that I don't really know who they are. It made it a sizable problem to find a friend who was willing to sit down and learn the game with me. It was not an easy pitch to the 25 to 35-year-old demographic. Luckily, once I was actually able to trick someone into playtesting the game, Oshi Push turned out to be surprisingly enjoyable and very nuanced. This is my review of Oshi Push, a Kickstarter VTuber trading card game. So, first and foremost, let's talk about accessibility and price point. Boxes are $120 with 24 packs, and starter decks are $18. These are big boy prices, and that's gonna make things a bit awkward. Deck building is 40 cards at no more than 3 copies each. Starter decks, from my understanding, are built around casual commander-style gameplay, and they do function well enough for that. Most cards in here are available in packs, with the exception of a few foil cards. Some come at 2 per deck, and one comes at 1, so you need to buy 3 starter decks to get a playset. which is very rough. The booster boxes are a bit weirder. There's 3 main different levels of base rarity. Commons, technically uncommons, rares, and super rares. It's about 2 rares per pack with 48 different rares to pull from, and 4 super rares per box with 7 different to pull from. This means it's probably going to be about 5 to 6 boxes to get your playset of rares and super rares, without counting high rarity pulls of course. This is on par or even slightly better when compared to big games. It's a bit above 2 playsets per case. More than that with high rarities, but that's still going to be more than $600 in product per playset. I feel that's very rough for a niche game, but it is what it is. Honestly, I can't be super mad at it. Alt arts are split between 7 different rarities. High-end like signature rare and serialized cards, and more low-end like borderless and stylized. Here's the high rarity breakdown of cards. It's a bit much, and most of these aren't going to be reasonable to obtain. There are a lot of them, but good luck. You'll need multiple $1,000 cases. Genuinely the best thing for this game is the original artwork of these characters. It's very good and there's quite a lot of it. There's a long list of artists who contributed to this game and did an amazing job. The anime girl style may or may not be for you, but I think most of it's pretty cool. Now, all the reference humor is entirely lost to me, and honestly it's very draining, but they did commit to the bit and I respect that. Also, interesting thing here I've read is that for the beta or pre-release artwork, they released cards with the art sketches, and I think that's very cool. Card quality is also very solid. They feel slightly thicker than one-piece cards and don't bend as easily. Now, for the negative. These really are just one-pieces card frames, like almost outright stolen. It feels lazy even if it does match this game's aesthetic. Second, this game's foiling is kinda whack. I don't mean the base rares or super rare background foiling, I mean the weird hot stamp effect they were going for. They tried to highlight the characters and their key objects, but for some cards it really looks like someone went in on MS Paint and drew over part of the card. Sometimes it works like the stars in a character's eyes, but sometimes it really doesn't. And for the full art rarities, the zoom in can make it look worse if you really look at it. Lastly, this game is marketed with Player's Choice sleeves. I can't recommend that brand due to quality issues. This is a location game, meaning 2 players fight over holding individual points, similar to Marvel Snap and Riftbound. Honestly, I'm not too familiar with the style of game, but from what I played it felt like long-term decision making was very directly rewarding, which I did enjoy. Fighting for these locations are the game's 3 main types of cards: your persona, your content, and your actions. Your persona card is your leader or commander card. It's always on the board and determines how you build the deck, between its type and color restrictions, and its unique reward for winning a battle. Persona cards determine how much energy you get each turn, and this mana can either be spent immediately on cards or banked for later turns. There's also upgrade cards that replace your persona and change its effects throughout the game. At the start of each of your turn, you move your persona to a location, which determines where you can play your content cards. Content cards are your units, they've got a variety of effects, and they contribute points to score each location. Capture locations, you're trying to have the most points on the location after a clash. Events or action cards happen immediately. Cards are played in a back and forth priority system, where players take actions until both pass back to back, which is a high interactivity form of gameplay. This makes the core gameplay, planning where to send your persona, and figuring out how to dole out your content cards to win key fights. The clash rewards for winning each fight can snowball very easily, so it becomes a really interesting balancing act between going wide to spam triggers, blitzing your own win condition, or stopping an opponent from going for game. I really do quite like it. The 2 decks I was able to mess around with were the 2 starter deck leaders, Pipkin Pippa and Tenma, who had very unique interactions with this gameplay loop. Pippa's effect grants ramp, meaning a quick snowball can lead you into chain-dropping late-game threats and blowing out opponents. Tenma is a hand-control brawler deck that focuses on moving around the leader to win as many fights as possible. Both of these decks were quite fun to pilot. Now, the real interesting gimmick to how this game plays is the concept of discard effects. that can trigger by discarding them, ignoring the regular cost. These effects range from simple ramp to game-changing synergistic effects. These enable outmaneuvering an opponent without spending mana. They're effectively hand traps. This makes deck building super interesting, since you now have to balance finding room for these free effects on top of building your core strategy. I quite like the core mechanics of this game. They're surprisingly nuanced once you get into it. The game design is by the guy behind Soulforge, which I have heard a few people speak positively of gameplay-wise, although those people have also always have trouble finding players. There are a few things I can't get into, unfortunately, that I would normally try to talk about in a longer review. I can't get into the 4-player commander-style aspects this game also markets itself on. I barely found a single opponent willing to try out this game. That was not a bit. Second, I can't comment on how accurate these cards are to these characters, since I do not know who they are. And third, I don't know the full meta of this game. I wish I did, but I haven't been able to find much online about how it's shaping up. I can just tell you from what I played that the core systems were fun casually, and I guess Pippa seemed a bit stronger. But this is entirely subject to change if I had more cards and more people to test with. I would recommend this game under a few very niche conditions. First, if you had a friend group that is all interested in playing this game. I could imagine this being very solid for a game night, if you're into these characters and if you're willing to split costs on the buy-in. Secondly, you could actually be into the conventions where this would be played. And if you happen to already be attending the few gatherings with other players, it's not a bad thing to pick up. And thirdly, if you're really into collecting these characters. I don't know about pursuing the high rarity stuff, but getting a complete set binder would be worth it if you like the art. It is legit quality. Outside of that, it's hard to recommend. Oshi Push is a small Kickstarter game, and you're not going to be able to find the locals unless you manually drag people into it. Also, the standard buy-in price makes it a bit harder to recommend as well. The secondary market for this game will be limited and hard to access, so you'll have to get product kind of directly. Overall, I think this game was worth playing, and it would be exciting if the game managed to go anywhere. I don't know if it will, and I don't even really think it will, but I would love to be proven wrong. Maybe if future collabs really work out, or if it manages to really succeed on the convention circuit. But you need someone more in tune with that world to make that call. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.